Hi there, YouTube world. My name is Tad Atkinson. This is a brand new channel for me. Actually, this is the first time doing a video log or anything like this for me, so bear with me if I ramble a little bit. I'm an actor-producer in Hollywood. I usually work behind the scenes frequently. I've done more stage work than I've done film work being out here, strangely enough. But of great interest to me always is gaming. I love the pastime. For me as an actor, it's a way to work on my improv chops, because you of course have no script, as you all know, since you're all gamers. I assume most people subscribing to this channel and watching these videos would be gamers. And so I've been playing D&D almost really since before it was called D&D. My father was a management consultant, always on the road, and he would bring back various miniature war games for the two of us to play together. And I'd gotten into King Arthur and Robin Hood, and so one day he found a game called Chainmail, brought that to me. And then in high school I was introduced to Dungeons and Dragons. This is the late 70s at this point. Spent 3 sessions observing them playing, and they said, well, do you want to give it a try? I said, sure, show me how to create the character. They gave me the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual. Said, no, you're our DM next week. Come up with something really good. So I'm thrown in the deep end, and my first experience as a gamer was dungeon mastering. It wasn't until December of 1979 that I was able to actually create my first player character and actually play the game. But I've played many other games. You're not going to find any edition wars here. There's only one edition of D&D that I'm remotely cold on, personally, and that's 4th. People played it, and some enjoyed it, so that's it. And that's my criteria. Number 1 criteria for a game. Do people enjoy playing it? If nobody enjoys playing it, it's not a good game. If people enjoy playing it, it's a good game. Same thing with editions. I have played, obviously, 1st edition, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 3.5, 5th edition even. Pathfinder, which some people call D&D 3.75. It's what 4th edition many people think should have been. I have not had a chance yet to play Pathfinder 2nd edition yet, nor the science fiction version. But I've even played the really heavy, crunchy games like Rollmaster and Space Master, Hackmaster, DC Heroes, which is now called Mutants and Masterminds, I think. They pulled all the DC characters out of it to make it more generic. And Paranoia, Morrow Project, the whole gamut, really. And as a case in point, I said, do people enjoy playing it? I'm not a big horror guy. I like thrillers, like Alfred Hitchcock, stuff like that. But I've never really been into the slasher type of movies. I've never been into Halloween, Friday the 13th, or anything like that. Nothing against them, just not my personal taste. So I'm not into chill. I'm not into the White Wolf reality. I like my monsters to be monsters. I don't want to play the monster necessarily. There are a few other things. I had some bad experiences as a player, and that will also, by the way, shade and color a player's love or dislike for a game. If they had terrible experiences, either because they had a bad game group or a bad DM, a lot of bad DMs out there. I won't say I'm one of the good ones. I've got a lot of experience. People seem to enjoy my games, but I'm not going to sit there and say, oh my gosh, you should all ask me, put me on a guru pedestal or something like that, and be a guru DM or something like that. It's everything is a dynamic based on players. Like, for instance, a lot of old school 1st edition players love the save or die stuff. They love the chance of immediate death. That's a thrill for them. I'm not really that kind of DM. I like telling a story, and it doesn't really fit my storytelling much if I have a continually changing roster of player characters because of a few bad saving throws. So some might say, oh, you're a coddling DM. Well, maybe I am. I also can be hard-hearted. And I will, if somebody does something stupid, I let the dice fall where they may. So there's players that love to play hack and slash. They just want to kick open the door, slay the monster, get the money. They're bored to death with thinking games. Some DMs are really good with puzzles. Honestly, I'm not. I have to do research and do all kinds of study to come up with a really good puzzle that's not tried and true, like the riddle of the Sphinx or something like that everybody knows, and so it's not a really much of a puzzle to begin with. Some players love the basic role playing, and I'm talking about ROLE, not ROLL playing. I have, as a player, been in an entire game session where not once did I pick up dice. I just simply played my character. DM did all the rolling. Or in some cases, like, because of my acting background, if I decide that I'm going to play a really intense scene, like kind of a Batman moment, where my player character is intimidating the villain, I sometimes throw myself a little too much into it, and the game master or dungeon master will say, "Okay, you're kind of intimidating me as a person. You don't need to roll. This is a success." So that's kind of the school that I come out of as a DM. I don't want to rely on dice. I'll use them if the player is having a problem. I use them in combat. But if at all possible, like people will be able to play their characters. Now, I as the channel says, I'm a grognard DM. All that means is I've been playing this particular hobby for a very long time. I go back to the old editions, and sometimes I prefer old school versus new school. And let's go into that definition, that distinction, or modern school. Best distinction I've ever heard in a brief summary is old school role-playing is about the rulings of the DM. Modern school role-playing games are about the rules. Now again, I'm not saying one's good, one's bad. For instance, old school role-playing can be, like I said, depends on the DM. There can be a really bad DM. If the DM is a bad DM, his rulings will not be consistent. They will not be fair. They will be skewed one way or the other, or in favor of one player over others, or in favor of his monsters over the players, something like that. That's not good DMing. A good DM, when he comes up with a ruling, because the rules don't cover a situation exactly. And I've got some examples of that coming up. So long as he applies the same ruling, okay, well, there's a rule now. A turnip does a D3 points of damage if it's thrown at somebody. Okay, well, it's always does a D3 damage. That's consistent. That's fair. It doesn't matter who's throwing the turnip. The turnip doesn't have a variable damage. Depending on who's throwing it, it's always a D3, and there it is. Like I mentioned, the classic case in point is the original THASA Star Trek role-playing game. It was a very good game. It's one of my favorite iterations of the Star Trek game. I like them all. I haven't played one that I didn't like yet. But it wasn't extensive. For instance, we know that there's more forms of psionics in a Star Trek universe than just simply telepathy. There are all kinds of episodes where a super powerful alien race was able to project illusions and things like that. Or telekinesis, or even teleportation. It wasn't just simply telepathy. But that's all they cover in the Star Trek THASA rules. They also have no rules for character advancement, which may seem really strange, and it was even at the time to us. But so everybody just every game master that ran that game came up with their own rules that they applied universally every time a character finished its adventure. How do you advance your skills? How do you improve your skills? If they had to deal with telepathy or psionics and everything, well, what did we come up with on the fly during the game? All right, anytime anybody tries to telekinesis an object, this is how this works. In modern rules gaming, it is very much about the rules. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody has access to the rules. It's not just some arcane secret the DM has squirreled away in some arcane tome that only the DM is supposed to look at. That actually was a thing in the old days. If you are a player, do not read past this point. If you're a dungeon master, this is your material. That would be in publications. Everybody has access to the same set of rules. And so at this point, the DM is really much more of a referee, ruling what's in bounds, what's out of bounds, based on the rules. And there's nothing wrong with that either, honestly. In some ways, it frees up a DM's time. In some ways, it limits his creativity. I've heard both sides of that argument. I'm able to adapt either way, and I still am pretty creative in a modern game. My players in Pathfinder will attest to this. I am the guy who came up with a dungeon that was one big mimic. The whole dungeon. There were creatures that the mimic left alone because it wanted to entice adventurers in and everything. And it wasn't until you were in the heart of the dungeon you realize this is a really big, really powerful mimic. I'll create monsters like that. I'll create monsters out of whole cloth based on genre. When I was a kid, I was a big fan of the Lloyd Alexander Chronicles of Prydain novels, and they had a bunch of bad guys called the Huntsmen of Auron. And the thing about the Huntsmen, they were humans that had pledged themselves to the Death Lord's service. And so they had a mystical bond. And every time you killed one Huntsman, all the others grew stronger. I love that concept. And I came up with that for Pathfinder. And oh my goodness. Best way to handle a pack of huntsmen is to try and make sure you launch an attack that kills all of them. You do not want to come up against a sole survivor. That's going to be a really bad fight, and it could even result in a TPK if you're not careful. So, at any rate, this is just kind of an introductory video, kind of laying out some of my basic philosophies. I think my next video that I for certain am going to do is about the difference in combat in D&D from the first ed and second ed THACO-based combat versus the more modern from 3.0 onwards, where it's your armor class is basically your difficulty number, and your attack rolls got to equal that to score the hit. Specifically, the way combat was handled for initiative, the differences are very stark, and so I kind of want to start with that. Again, I like them both. I play them both. I think one has strengths over the other, and vice versa. One's more easy. Well, I'll get into it in the next video. So, at any rate, hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you subscribe in the button below, and we'll see each other again on the next video. Have a great one.